One of the things that everybody has been talking about, and I mean everybody, is right now there's no real sports going on. Like, we all know that. We all know there's no real sports. I mean, the other day I caught myself on ESPN.com watching Korean baseball. So I don't know who anybody is. I don't care. I just wanted to see people run and hit a ball. I was excited to see it. UFC, which we're going to talk about here in a little later on the show, had already had double the buy rates of normal. So people are dying for sports right now. I mean, that's probably the wrong word to use right now, considering people are sick. People are really wanting sports. Okay, let's say that, so it doesn't become one of these things where I get comments somewhere where somebody's saying, "I can't believe you said that." People are really wanting sports right now. So giving it to them would be exciting. Giving them sports would be exciting. But since we can't give it to them, what we really have going on right now is most of the sports world is going on and on and on and on about a documentary. Just a single documentary. Everybody is talking about Michael Jordan's Last Dance. You guys all know what it is. And it's been very interesting not only to watch the documentary, which I think is wonderfully done, just amazingly done, but to watch the reaction of people in the sports world who have actually forgotten that, like, these professional talking heads have almost forgotten that sports was supposed to go on, and they're just every day going back and getting heated discussions about what happened 30 years ago. I mean, it's amazing to me. And the conversations are endless. Was Jordan the best player of his time? Was Jordan this? How good was Pippen? How good was Rodman? How would these guys stack up against today's player? Blah, blah, blah. But one of the things no one's talking about, very well should be, is that, while Michael Jordan is probably undisputedly the greatest basketball player of all time, one guy who doesn't get his credit, and most likely shouldn't, but could get credit, would be Mr. Steve Kerr. Now, you're thinking to yourself, the hell did Steve Kerr ever do, right? I mean, that's got to be something that's crossing your mind. What the hell did Steve Kerr ever do to be considered one of the greatest basketball players of all time? Well, Steve Kerr is actually either very, very good or very, very lucky. Now, that'll be up to you to decide. So let's talk about Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr has won 5 NBA basketball championships. 5. He won 3 with the Bulls, and he won 2 more when he went to San Antonio. Now, you may say that anybody could have won with the Bulls on the bench, coming off the bench, or anybody could have won on those San Antonio teams. And I would say probably. But you have to say Steve Kerr is a lifetime career 45.4% three-point shooter. When you needed a couple key threes from the bench, you brought Steve Kerr out. When you needed a feisty little defender who wasn't afraid to get punched in the face by Michael Jordan, you brought Steve Kerr out. That's right. Steve Kerr was an average basketball player, NBA basketball player, not average for the world. He would obviously go out there in his prime and torch any one of us. Steve Kerr was an average NBA basketball player who knew how to put himself in a position to help his team and wasn't afraid to do it. As an egoless player who turned into one heck of a coach. So now you're talking about a guy who is a 5-time basketball champion as a player. 5 times. And as a coach, he is a 3-time NBA champion. That's phenomenal. Has anybody else ever done that? 5-time NBA champion, 3-time NBA coach champion? That's just crazy, right? Now, if you want to see something that's even more fascinating, and there's a graphic up on the screen. For those of you listening on the podcast, you don't see this, but for those of you watching the YouTube show, you can see this. Steve Kerr was on the team that had the most wins ever. The Bulls. 95-96, 72 wins, 10 losses. That's amazing. That is amazing. 72 wins and only 10 losses is amazing. Except for the fact that he coached the 2015-16 Warriors, and they were 73-9. So, Steve Kerr, he's either a good luck charm, which would be cool, or he brings something to a team that has to be accounted for and that should be figured out at some point where somebody sits down and says, this is the intangible that Steve Kerr brings to the team. Now, it might just be he's a smart basketball player. Smart basketball players turn to smart coaches. That's how it works. Phil Jackson was not a super talented basketball player, but he was a very smart basketball player when he played with the Knicks. So they could put him in the positions they needed to help the team win. So when you look at this Last Dance, there's a lot of different stars coming up. I just wanted to bring some attention to a guy that not a lot of people are probably talking about and should. Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr. I like Steve Kerr. I don't know. I've always liked Steve Kerr. He annoys me a little bit with his political grandstanding because I hate politics being involved in sports. But aside from that, the guy knows the game, obviously, and he's a champion. There's no doubt about that.